The arrival. The jungle was alive. It buzzed, clicked, and whispered with the sounds of countless alien creatures. Its dense canopy blocked out most of the sunlight, leaving the ground below in a state of perpetual twilight. The air was thick, heavy with humidity and the smell of wet earth. Somewhere in the distance, a low growl rumbled, deep and menacing. From the treetops, a metallic screech ripped through the air as a ship plummeted out of the sky. Flames trailed behind the craft as it broke through the trees, tearing through branches like paper before crashing into the muddy forest floor. The impact sent shockwaves through the jungle, scattering birds and small creatures in every direction. The Huntress staggered out of the wreckage. Her armor was battered, her face smeared with ash, but her sharp green eyes burned with determination. She was no stranger to danger. She had faced creatures on dozens of planets, predators that would make most warriors tremble. But this jungle, it felt different, alive in a way she couldn't quite explain. The Huntress, known only by her call sign, Vera, checked her surroundings. Her ship was beyond repair, a smoking ruin of twisted metal. She pulled out her tracker, a small handheld device that emitted a soft, rhythmic beep. The signal was faint but clear. Her target was nearby. The beast she was hunting was no ordinary predator. It was a genetically engineered monstrosity, designed to adapt and evolve. It had escaped during transit, killing the crew on board before fleeing to this jungle. Vera had been tracking it ever since. Time to finish this, she muttered to herself, tightening the straps on her gear. Her voice was calm, steady, but her mind was already calculating her next move. She had limited resources, no backup, and a jungle full of unknown dangers. But she thrived in chaos. She was the hunter, and this was just another job. As she moved deeper into the jungle, the sounds grew louder, more oppressive. Every step felt like it was being washed. The trees were impossibly tall, their trunks wrapped in thick vines that pulsed faintly, almost as if they had a heartbeat. Strange, glowing flowers lined her path, casting an eerie blue light on the ground. She paused, crouching low to examine a set of tracks in the mud. Large, clawed, and fresh. "It's close," she whispered, her grip tightening on her plasma rifle. Suddenly, the jungle went silent. The buzzing insects, the chirping creatures, even the wind through the trees. It all stopped. Vera froze, every muscle in her body tensed. Silence in a jungle like this wasn't natural. It was a warning. A low growl came from behind her. She spun around, her rifle raised, but there was nothing there. Just the dense foliage, swaying slightly in the still air. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic got hunters killed. The growl came again, this time from her left. She pivoted, scanning the trees. Still nothing. Her tracker beeped erratically, the signal flickering. The beast was toying with her, testing her reactions. It was intelligent, too intelligent. A sudden rustling above made her look up, just in time to see a massive shape dart through the canopy. It was fast, impossibly fast, and all she could make out were its glowing yellow eyes. She fired a shot, but it hit nothing but leaves. The beast let out a roar, a sound that made her skin crawl. Vera backed up, her mind racing. The creature wasn't attacking outright. It was studying her, trying to figure out her weaknesses. She needed to turn the tables, take control of the situation. She reached into her belt and pulled out a small device, a motion-activated trap. It wasn't much, but it might buy her some time. She set the trap and moved quickly, keeping her eyes on the trees above. The jungle seemed to close in around her, the foliage growing thicker, the shadows darker. The feeling of being watched grew stronger. It wasn't just the beast. The jungle itself seemed aware. As she pushed forward, she came across something that made her stop in her tracks. A broken piece of armor, half buried in the mud. It wasn't hers. She knelt down to examine it, brushing away the dirt. The markings were from a hunter's guild, a rival faction known for their ruthlessness. "So I'm not the first," she said under her breath. Her stomach tightened, Whoever had been here before her hadn't made it out alive. Before she could dwell on it, her tracker let out a sharp, urgent beep. The signal was stronger now, and it was moving. Fast. Vera barely had time to react before the beast lunged out of the shadows, its massive form barreling toward her. She rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding its claws. It was bigger than she had imagined, its dark, scaly body blending perfectly with the jungle. She fired a burst from her rifle, the plasma bolts lighting up the dark. One shot grazed the creature's shoulder, making it howl in pain, but it didn't slow down. Instead, it disappeared back into the shadows, leaving only the sound of its growls echoing around her. Vera's breathing was ragged, but her resolve was unshaken. This wasn't just a hunt anymore. It was a game of survival, and the jungle was the playing field. She smiled grimly, reloading her rifle. "All right then," she said to the darkness. "Let's see who's really hunting who." The jungle responded with a roar. The hunt had truly begun. The first encounter. The jungle's silence was unnerving. It wasn't the kind of peaceful quiet one might expect in a natural wilderness. This was intentional, purposeful, a warning that something far deadlier was near. Vera felt it in her gut. The air itself felt heavier, charged with a strange energy that made her skin prickle. She crouched low, brushing aside a massive fern. The faint glow of bioluminescent fungi illuminated her path, their soft, pulsing light creating eerie patterns on the jungle floor. Her tracker beeped steadily, the signal growing stronger. The beast was close, but it wasn't just her quarry she was worried about anymore. The jungle felt alive, its very atmosphere seeming to conspire against her. Ahead, a sound, a rustling, faint but deliberate. She froze, rifle raised, every muscle in her body taut. The sound came again, closer this time, accompanied by a deep, guttural clicking noise. It wasn't the beast. This was something smaller, faster. She glanced at the ground and noticed tiny movements. An army of insect-like creatures, their exoskeletons reflecting the faint glow of the fungi. They moved in perfect unison, like a tide, flowing across the forest floor toward her. Vera held her breath as they swarmed past, ignoring her entirely. They climbed over rocks, plants, and even the decaying remains of some long-dead animal. The clicking sound grew louder, echoing through the trees. Then, as quickly as they had appeared, the insects vanished into the underbrush. The jungle fell silent again, but this time it felt like it was holding its breath, waiting. A sudden screech tore through the air, high-pitched and agonizing. It was an animal's cry, a prey caught in the jaws of a predator. Vera didn't flinch. Instead, she moved toward the sound, her steps careful and measured. The foliage thickened as she approached, and the smell of blood reached her before she saw the source. In a small clearing, she found the aftermath of a kill. A large herbivore lay on the ground, its massive frame torn apart. Deep gashes ran across its body, and the ground was soaked in blood. Vera scanned the scene, her trained eyes picking out the details. The wounds were clean, precise, as if made by claws sharper than steel. There were no signs of struggle, no tracks leading away from the body. The beast had taken what it needed and vanished without a trace. Vera stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. Something wasn't right. The wounds were still fresh, the blood warm, yet there was no movement in the surrounding jungle. No scavengers, no insects, nothing. It was as if the jungle itself refused to disturb the scene. She turned back to her tracker, the steady beeping now erratic, jumping between faint and strong signals. The beast wasn't just fast, it was deliberately masking its presence, playing with her. She adjusted the frequency, trying to stabilize the signal, when a shadow passed over her. Instinct took over. She dived to the side, just as a massive shape crashed down where she'd been standing. The impact shook the ground, and Vera rolled, bringing her rifle up in one smooth motion. Her heart pounded as she finally got her first clear look at the creature. It was monstrous. The beast stood over 8 feet tall, its sleek, muscular body covered in dark, chitin-like armor that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Its glowing yellow eyes locked onto hers, unblinking and filled with a predatory intelligence. 2 long blade-like claws extended from its forelimbs, still dripping with the blood of its last kill. For a moment, neither moved. It tilted its head slightly, studying her, as if trying to decide whether she was worth the effort. Then, with a sudden, ear-splitting roar, it lunged. Vera fired, the plasma bolts lighting up the clearing. The beast dodged with inhuman speed, weaving through the blasts like a shadow. It was fast, too fast. She barely had time to react as it closed the distance between them. Its claws slashed out, and she threw herself backward, narrowly avoiding a blow that would have cut her in half. The fight was chaotic, a blur of movement and noise. Vera was fast, but the beast was faster, forcing her to rely on her instincts and training. She rolled, ducked, and fired in rapid succession, her shots keeping it at bay, but failing to land a decisive hit. The jungle seemed to shift around her, the foliage closing in, roots and vines tangling her feet. The beast let out a low growl, circling her now. It wasn't attacking outright anymore. It was testing her, probing for weaknesses. Vera's mind raced. This wasn't just a hunt, it was a game, and she was the prey. Her breathing was heavy, her muscles burning, but she didn't let up. She reached into her belt and pulled out a flash grenade, tossing it into the air. The explosion of light and sound temporarily disoriented the beast, giving her a chance to retreat. She didn't run far, just enough to put some distance between them and regroup. From the shadows, the beast let out a chilling roar, one that echoed through the jungle. It wasn't a sound of anger or frustration. It was a promise. This wasn't over. Vera crouched behind a fallen tree, her rifle at the ready. Sweat dripped down her face as she stared into the darkness. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was clear. "All right, big guy," she muttered, a small smirk playing on her lips. "Let's see who cracks first." The jungle responded with a low, ominous hum, as if accepting the challenge. The hunter becomes the hunted. The jungle seemed to breathe. It shifted around Vera, as though it had grown tired of watching, and decided to join the hunt itself. The trees loomed taller, their roots twisting into shapes that looked almost deliberate. The air, heavy and damp, seemed to press against her skin, making every step feel harder, slower. It wasn't just the beast anymore. Something else was at play. Vera adjusted the settings on her tracker, her hand steady despite the unease creeping up her spine. The device beeped faintly, then sputtered before dying completely. She frowned, smacking it against her thigh. It was designed to withstand radiation storms and magnetic interference, yet here it was, useless. "Great," she muttered. Back to old-school hunting. She moved cautiously, her sharp eyes scanning the underbrush and the canopy above. The beast wasn't just fast, it was clever. Every encounter with it had been a deliberate test, forcing her to adapt or die. And now, it wasn't just avoiding her traps, it was setting its own. Ahead, she spotted a clearing. Sunlight broke through the dense canopy, illuminating a pool of water surrounded by strange, glowing plants. She hesitated. The scene was too perfect, too inviting. It screamed trap, but she needed water, and more importantly, she needed to understand how the beast thought. Vera knelt at the edge of the pool, her rifle slung over her shoulder, every sense on high alert. She studied the area, her reflection rippling in the water as tiny, darting fish moved beneath the surface. Her fingers brushed the ground, feeling the subtle vibrations that told her she wasn't alone. A single drop of liquid hit her shoulder, cold, sticky. She froze, her eyes darting upward. A thick glob of translucent mucus dangled from a branch directly above her. The beast had been here. Recently. Before she could react, the jungle erupted into chaos. The ground beneath her shifted, and she rolled just in time to avoid being impaled by a sharp, needle-like root that shot up from the earth. Dozens of similar roots burst from the ground, their movements erratic and precise, like they were being guided. Vera scrambled to her feet, narrowly dodging another strike. The jungle wasn't alive. It was a weapon. She fired her rifle at the roots, the plasma bolts cutting through them, but they kept coming, relentless and unyielding. And then she felt it. The weight of eyes. The beast was watching. Not attacking, just watching. Clever, she muttered under her breath, her voice laced with grudging admiration. She bolted toward the trees, zigzagging to avoid the jungle's attacks. The roots receded as she moved deeper into the forest, but the feeling of being hunted only grew stronger. The beast wasn't just stalking her anymore. It was hurting her, guiding her toward something. She stumbled into a narrow ravine, its rocky walls covered in moss and strange, pulsing vines. The air here was colder, the sunlight barely penetrating the dense foliage above. Her breathing was ragged, her body aching from the constant strain. She needed a plan, and she needed it fast. As she moved deeper into the ravine, she noticed markings on the rocks, claw marks, deep and deliberate. They weren't random. They were patterns, almost like symbols. She traced one with her fingers, the jagged edges cutting into her gloves. It was a warning, left by someone, or something, that had been here before her. Then she saw it, a piece of armor, half buried in the dirt. She pulled it free, her stomach tightening as she recognized the insignia. It belonged to another hunter, one who had disappeared months ago, while tracking the same beast. The armor was scorched, torn in places, and covered in strange, web-like fibers. She inspected it closely, her fingers brushing against something embedded in the metal. A tooth. Long, curved, and razor-sharp. The beast had claimed this hunter as its prey. A low growl echoed through the ravine, pulling her attention away. It was close. Too close. Vera backed up, her rifle raised, every nerve in her body screaming at her to run. But she didn't. She stood her ground, her eyes scanning the shadows. The growl came again, this time from behind her. She spun around, only to find empty air. And then it struck. The beast leaped from the shadows, its claws slashing out as it knocked her to the ground. She rolled with the impact, her rifle slipping from her grasp. Pain shot through her side as its claws raked against her armor, tearing through the outer layer. She kicked out, her boot connecting with its chest, forcing it back just enough for her to scramble to her feet. Blood dripped from its claws as it circled her, its glowing yellow eyes filled with cold, predatory intelligence. This wasn't just a hunt for it. This was a game. Vera reached for her sidearm, her fingers brushing against the grip. The beast lunged again, faster this time, and she fired blindly, the plasma bolts lighting up the ravine. One shot grazed its shoulder, eliciting a snarl of pain. It didn't retreat. Instead, it paused, its head tilting slightly as if analyzing her. And then it did something that sent a chill down her spine. It smiled. Not a snarl or a baring of teeth, a deliberate, knowing smile. Vera's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a predator. It was something far worse. The hunter had become the hunted, and the jungle's deadly game was only beginning. The deadly game. The jungle was no longer just an environment. It was a labyrinth, alive with intent and malice. Every step Vera took felt calculated, not by her, but by something greater, something unseen. The air was suffocating, thick with moisture, and the faint, metallic tang of decay. It wasn't just a hunt anymore. It was a test, a battle of wits between predator and prey, and she wasn't entirely sure who was which. She crouched low, her fingers brushing against the dirt. The tracks were there, faint but deliberate. The beast wanted her to see them. Each print led her deeper into the jungle, into terrain that grew more twisted with every step. Trees with sharp, jagged bark loomed like silent sentinels. Strange, bulbous plants lined the path, their translucent surfaces pulsing faintly with an inner glow. Vera wasn't foolish enough to touch them. The jungle had already revealed its nature. Everything here was a threat, a trap disguised as beauty. Her tracker, still malfunctioning, had been reduced to dead weight. She tossed it aside, relying instead on instinct and experience. The beast was clever, but so was she. If it thought it could outmaneuver her, it was wrong. She adjusted the grip on her rifle, the familiar weight a small comfort in an increasingly alien world. The jungle shifted. She felt it before she saw it. A subtle change in the air, a faint vibration beneath her boots. The ground ahead looked normal at first glance, but Vera noticed the subtle movement. The earth seemed to ripple, like something was alive just beneath the surface. She picked up a rock and tossed it forward. The instant it hit the ground, the earth erupted. Razor-thin vines shot out, slicing through the air with deadly precision. They writhed and snapped, searching for prey before retracting back into the soil. "Noted," Vera muttered, stepping carefully around the danger zone. The beast was leading her into a gauntlet. Every step forward brought new challenges. The jungle had become a weapon, a living maze designed to test her resolve. She couldn't help but admire the cunning behind it. This wasn't random. This was strategy. She pressed on, her senses on high alert. The jungle sounds had shifted again, less chaotic, more rhythmic, a pattern. She couldn't quite place it, but it felt intentional, like a heartbeat. Then she saw it. A clearing stretched out before her, bathed in an unnatural amber glow. At the center was a towering structure, a massive, spiraling tree unlike anything she'd ever seen. Its bark was smooth and reflective, shimmering like liquid metal. Strange glyphs were etched into its surface, glowing faintly as if alive. She approached cautiously, her rifle raised. The air around the tree was cooler, almost soothing, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the jungle. As she got closer, she noticed something else. Bones, dozens of them, scattered around the base of the tree. They weren't just animal remains. There were fragments of armor, weapons, and tools. Hunters, just like her. The beast had brought them here. Her stomach tightened as she studied the scene. This wasn't just a hunting ground. It was a graveyard. A low growl echoed through the clearing, pulling her attention upward. The beast stood perched on one of the tree's massive branches, its yellow eyes glowing in the dim light. It was watching her, its body coiled and ready to strike. But it didn't move. Not yet. Vera tightened her grip on her rifle. She knew what this was. The beast had led her here deliberately, forcing her into an arena of its own design. It wanted a fight, and it wanted her to play by its rules. "All right," she said under her breath, her voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. "Let's see what you've got." The beast leaped down, landing with a thud that shook the ground. It was massive, its dark, chitinous armor gleaming in the amber light. But it wasn't just its size that unnerved her. It was the intelligence in its eyes, the calculated way it moved, as if it already knew how this would end. It charged, its claws slashing through the air with terrifying speed. Vera dove to the side, rolling into a crouch and firing a burst of plasma bolts. The shots hit their mark, grazing the beast's side, but it barely flinched. It was faster than she'd anticipated, its movements precise and deliberate. The fight was brutal. The beast was relentless, each attack forcing her to retreat, to adapt. But Vera wasn't just reacting. She was studying it, analyzing its movements, its patterns. It was strong, yes, but it had a rhythm, a pattern she could exploit. She lured it closer to the tree, her mind racing as she formulated a plan. The glowing glyphs on the bark pulsed faster as she approached, almost as if they were responding to her presence. She had no idea what they were or what they did, but she was out of options. The beast lunged again, its claws narrowly missing her as she darted around the tree. She reached out, her hand brushing against the glyphs. The instant she made contact, the ground shook. The tree let out a low, resonant hum, and the air around her seemed to vibrate. The beast froze, its eyes narrowing as it snarled. It wasn't just angry. It was afraid. Vera smiled grimly. Didn't expect that, did you? The jungle's deadly game wasn't over yet. But now she had a new piece to play. The revelation. The air around the glowing tree felt electric, buzzing with energy that pressed against Vera's skin like 1,000 invisible needles. She kept her back to the massive, spiraling structure, her rifle raised toward the beast that stood frozen just a few meters away. Its yellow eyes burned with something she hadn't seen before, not rage or hunger, but fear. The tree pulsed again, its metallic bark glowing brighter as if responding to her presence. The hum grew louder, deeper, until it resonated in her chest. It wasn't just a sound. It was a signal, a language. The beast let out a guttural snarl, shaking itself free of whatever momentary paralysis had gripped it. It didn't charge. Instead, it circled her slowly, its massive claws raking against the ground, carving deep grooves into the earth. Vera's grip tightened on her rifle. "What are you so scared of?" she muttered under her breath, her gaze darting between the beast and the tree. The glyphs etched into the bark shifted, their patterns rearranging before her eyes. She could almost feel their meaning, like a whisper just out of reach. Instinctively, she reached out, her fingers brushing against the cold, metallic surface. The world around her disappeared. In an instant, Vera was no longer standing in the jungle. She was somewhere else, somewhere impossibly vast and alien. Endless, glowing lines stretched across an infinite black void, forming shapes, symbols, and structures she couldn't comprehend. Voices, countless and overlapping, filled the space, speaking in a language that wasn't a language at all. And then, clarity. The jungle wasn't just alive. It was a creation, a construct designed by something far beyond her understanding. The tree was its heart, its core, and the beast. The beast wasn't its enemy. It was its tool, its guardian. The voices merged into one, deep and resonant, filling her mind. "You are not the first." The words weren't spoken, they were felt, pressed into her consciousness with the weight of a tidal wave. She saw flashes of others like her, hunters, soldiers, explorers, each one lured to this place, each one tested. They fought, they adapted, they failed. The jungle consumed them, learning from them, evolving. The beast was part of the system, a predator designed to test the limits of its prey. But Vera wasn't just fighting the beast. She was fighting the jungle itself, an experiment in the making. The vision shattered, and she was back in the clearing, the hum of the tree fading into a low vibration. The beast was still circling her, but its movements were slower, more deliberate. It wasn't just hunting her anymore. It was waiting. Vera lowered her rifle slightly, her mind racing. This wasn't just about survival. This was about proving something, to the jungle, to whatever intelligence had created it. She glanced at the glyphs, now dim and still. The tree had given her answers, but it hadn't given her a way out. The beast growled low, its muscles tensing. "All right," she muttered, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "If this is a test, let's see how you handle a human who doesn't play by the rules." She pulled a small device from her belt, a remote detonator linked to the traps she'd left behind. The jungle might have been smarter than her, the beast faster, but she had one thing neither of them did: human ingenuity. The beast lunged, and she pressed the button. Explosions erupted behind her, a chain reaction that tore through the jungle. The shockwave sent her sprawling, but she didn't hesitate. She rolled to her feet and fired a volley of plasma bolts at the beast, forcing it to retreat. The jungle roared in response. The trees bent and shifted, roots tearing free from the ground, vines snapping toward her like whips. The entire clearing seemed to come alive, a living, writhing storm of fury. Vera ran, dodging and weaving through the chaos. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she couldn't stop. The jungle wasn't just testing her anymore. It was angry. She stumbled into another clearing, this one smaller and darker, the air thick with an unnatural chill. In the center was another structure, smaller than the tree, but just as alien. A console, glowing faintly with the same glyphs. She hesitated for only a moment before rushing to it. Her hands flew over the surface, the glyphs rearranging themselves under her touch. She didn't understand how she knew what to do. Maybe the tree had left something in her mind, a fragment of its knowledge. The beast roared, its massive form bursting into the clearing. It was injured, blood oozing from the burns and gashes she'd inflicted, but it was still deadly. It charged, its claws slicing through the air as it closed the distance. Vera slammed her hand onto the console. The jungle froze. Every sound, every movement stopped as if the entire world had been paused. The beast staggered mid-charge, its body locking up, its glowing eyes wide with confusion. Vera stared at the console, her chest heaving as the realization hit her. She hadn't just disabled the jungle. She'd taken control of it. A slow, triumphant smile spread across her face. "Your move," she said, turning to the frozen beast. The jungle was no longer its game. It was hers. The turning point. The silence was deafening. The jungle, once alive with a cacophony of noises, chirps, growls, the hum of unseen forces, was now still. Even the air felt different, as though the entire ecosystem was holding its breath. Vera stood before the glowing console, her fingers hovering over its alien glyphs. Her breathing was ragged, her body trembling from the adrenaline, still coursing through her veins. The beast was frozen mid-strike, its claws inches from her, its massive frame locked in place by whatever she had triggered. The console hummed faintly, its surface warm to the touch. The glyphs shifted under her hands, rearranging themselves into patterns she couldn't comprehend, but instinctively understood. This wasn't just a machine. It was an interface, a direct link to the jungle's mind. "All right," she muttered, wiping sweat from her brow. "Let's see what makes you tick." She pressed her palm against the console, and the world around her dissolved into light. For the second time, Vera found herself in the void, a place of infinite blackness threaded with glowing lines of gold and silver. But this time, she wasn't just an observer. She was inside the system, her mind linked to the jungle's core. The voice came again, deep and resonant, filling the void. "You have survived longer than most." Vera turned, though there was no direction in this place. The voice wasn't coming from anywhere. It was everywhere, pressing against her mind like a physical weight. "Survived," she said, her voice sharp. "You mean your twisted little experiment. What is this place?" The glowing lines shifted, forming shapes that pulsed with meaning. Memories. Histories. This is the crucible. The word struck her like a blow. Images flooded her mind. Ancient civilizations, creatures from across the galaxy, all drawn to this jungle. They came seeking glory, knowledge, or escape, but none had left. The crucible was a proving ground, a test of adaptability and resilience. The voice continued, its tone devoid of emotion. "Those who pass are deemed worthy. Those who fail are reclaimed." Worthy of what? Vera snapped. "What are you testing for?" The void shuddered, the glowing lines flickering as if uncertain. Purpose. Evolution. Survival. Vera's jaw tightened. "So you throw people into this death trap, pit them against your monster, and call it a test. For what? Entertainment." The lines pulsed, the voice growing colder. "This is not entertainment. This is necessity. The galaxy demands strength. Adaptation. You are here because you are strong. Prove it, and you will ascend. Fail, and you will feed the crucible." Vera clenched her fists. No one gave me a choice. The void pulsed, and suddenly, she was back in the clearing. The jungle had come alive again, but something was different. The beast, once frozen, now moved with hesitation, its glowing eyes flicking between her and the tree, as though it sensed the shift in power. Vera's hand tightened on her rifle as she stepped forward. The console's glow spread, casting her in an eerie light. She could feel the jungle's presence pressing against her mind, watching her, waiting for her decision. For the first time, the beast didn't attack. It circled her slowly, its movements less predatory, almost wary. "You're afraid," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "You've been in control this whole time, haven't you? But now you know. I can break this." The jungle responded with a low, guttural hum, and the ground beneath her feet trembled. Vines snapped toward her, their sharp edges gleaming, but they stopped inches from her face, quivering as if uncertain. Vera raised her rifle, aiming it at the beast. "This isn't just a test. It's a trap. And I'm done playing your game." The beast growled, low and menacing, but it didn't attack. Instead, it stepped back, its massive frame blending into the shadows. The console flared brighter, the glyphs rearranging into a new pattern. A choice. Vera's mind raced as the meaning crystallized. She could disable the system, shut the crucible down, and end the cycle. Or she could leave it intact, take control, and use it for herself. Her finger hovered over the glyphs, her heart pounding. The jungle waited, silent and expectant. The beast stepped forward, its yellow eyes locking onto hers. For the first time, it didn't look like a predator. It looked desperate. Vera hesitated. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about power, control, legacy. She took a deep breath and made her choice. The jungle roared, the sound echoing through the trees as the ground beneath her feet began to shift. The beast let out a piercing howl, its form dissolving into light as the crucible's energy surged. Vera stood firm, her hands gripping the console as the jungle bent to her will. The power of the crucible flowed through her, reshaping the world around her. And when the light faded, she was no longer just a hunter. She was the master of the game. The final stand. The jungle was in chaos. The trees groaned and cracked, their massive trunks twisting unnaturally. The ground heaved as roots tore free, writhing like snakes. Bioluminescent plants burst into showers of light, their glow flickering like dying stars. The crucible was breaking apart, and Vera stood at its center, her hands still on the console that had unleashed the storm. The glyphs beneath her fingers pulsed erratically, their patterns growing more fractured by the second. The jungle wasn't just alive, it was panicking. She had forced its hand, unraveling its carefully constructed design. The beast, the traps, the endless maze of deadly beauty. It had all been part of a singular purpose. But now, that purpose was crumbling. Vera stepped back, her chest heaving, as she tried to process what she had done. The crucible's power had surged through her, leaving her senses sharper, her mind clearer. She could feel the jungle's anger, its desperation. She had taken control, if only for a moment, and the system was fighting to reclaim itself. A roar cut through the chaos. The beast emerged from the shadows, its massive frame backlit by the flickering glow of the jungle. Its eyes burned brighter than ever, but something was different. It wasn't just the unrelenting predator she had faced before. It was wounded, its movements slower, less precise. The jungle's collapse was affecting it too. Vera raised her rifle, aiming it at the creature. "This is it, isn't it?" she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil around her. "Your final move. One last fight." The beast growled low, its claws scraping the ground as it prepared to strike. But it didn't lunge. Not yet. It was studying her, calculating. It knew the stakes as well as she did. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about who would walk away and who would be consumed. The jungle surged around them, vines snapping and roots erupting from the ground. The air crackled with energy, and the console behind her began to spark, its glyphs blinking out one by one. Time was running out. Vera smirked, adjusting her grip on her rifle. "All right," she muttered. "Let's finish this." The beast roared, charging toward her with a speed that defied its size. Vera dove to the side, her plasma rifle lighting up the clearing as she fired. The bolt struck the creature, leaving scorched marks across its armored body, but it didn't stop. It swiped at her, its claws narrowly missing as she rolled, and came up firing again. The fight was brutal, the jungle itself joining the fray. Vines lashed at her legs, trying to pull her down, while the ground shifted beneath her feet. The beast used the chaos to its advantage, its attacks relentless and precise. It was faster, stronger, but Vera had something it didn't, an understanding of the system. She lured the beast closer to the console, her mind racing as she formulated a plan. The glyphs were flickering wildly now, their light dimming with every passing second. The crucible's collapse was imminent, and she needed to act fast. The beast lunged again, its claws slashing toward her chest. Vera ducked, feeling the air crackle as the attack missed by inches. She spun, firing another burst of plasma at its exposed flank. The creature howled in pain, stumbling but refusing to fall. "Come on," she muttered, backing toward the console. "Just a little closer." The beast snarled, its glowing eyes narrowing as it prepared for another attack. It charged, and Vera waited until the last possible second before diving to the side. The creature crashed into the console, its massive weight shattering the already fragile structure. The jungle screamed. A shockwave of energy erupted from the console, sending Vera and the beast flying in opposite directions. The ground buckled, and the trees began to collapse, their towering forms crashing into one another like falling dominoes. The crucible was dying, and it was taking everything with it. Vera struggled to her feet, her body aching from the impact. The beast lay a few meters away, its armor cracked and its movements sluggish. For a moment, she hesitated. The creature, for all its ferocity, was just another pawn in the jungle's game. A tool created to test, to kill. It had fought her with everything it had, and now it was broken. She aimed her rifle, her finger hovering over the trigger. The beast met her gaze, its glowing eyes dimming but still defiant. It let out a low growl, not of anger, but of resignation. It was beaten, and it knew it. Vera lowered her weapon. "Not today," she said quietly, turning away. The jungle continued to collapse around her, but Vera didn't stop. She moved toward the edge of the clearing, her path lit by the dying glow of the crucible. The air was thick with ash and the scent of burning wood, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. As she reached the tree line, she glanced back one last time. The beast was still there, its massive form silhouetted against the chaos. It watched her go, unmoving, until the jungle swallowed it whole. Vera stepped into the open, the dense canopy giving way to a sky filled with stars. She took a deep breath, the cool night air filling her lungs. She was alive. She had won. But the crucible's voice lingered in her mind, a final whisper that sent a chill down her spine. "You are not the last." The stars above seemed colder, distant. The jungle was gone, but the game was far from over.